Welcome to Reaper's Report. This is your host, Raging Reaper 1, and today we will be reviewing Death Stranding. In Death Stranding, you play as a man called Sam Porter Bridges, which is basically a glorified delivery man, who in turn ends up having a baby strapped to his chest in order to detect the BTs, or beached things, as the acronym is stated, in which the beach is a land between the living and the dead, which I would consider to be purgatory, because it is not quite the afterlife, but a passage to the afterlife. Somewhere where souls are basically trapped along with every other animal and other dead thing has gone. And in these events, it began with the event called the Death Stranding, which started with a void out, which a void out is actually what happens to somebody when they die now. After 48 hours, their body becomes into a necrosis that somehow creates a rift or void between the two worlds, connecting them at the same time, but also closing in on itself, and creates what's like a nuclear bomb. In the beginning, you'll find out that Sam is actually son of the president, who is dying in an untimely manner, but she decides to give him one last mission, even though he'd prefer to be a loner and not actually go with the United Cities of America, which is the new government system over America after it's been pretty much closely wiped out. Considering there's no more states anymore, it's scarcely cities, if even that, more like distribution centers along with a few shelters surrounding them. You'll notice that there's scarcity of people, if any, and you'll soon be strapped with a fetus to your chest in order to detect the BTs in the surrounding areas after you have encountered a timefall, which a timefall is now the rain in this world, but instead of like normal rain, the second it hits you, it accelerates your aging or aging of anything around it at an alarming rate to the point of death, or at least as far as I know. I had never really seen it actually age somebody to death, but it did age them to the point of almost looking like a 90-year-old. Or graying the hair. Or destroying your cargo. Which I know what you're thinking. A game where I gotta walk around, and if I encounter rain, it's telling me to go underneath and seek shelter somewhere, or hide out until the rain's gone. I'd highly advise against doing this. I tried it one time, and it was actually on a mission where the rain wouldn't stop, and I inevitably had to wait about 20 minutes before finding out the rain's just not going to stop. I'm going to have to move forward, and that's just a part of this mission. And for the most part, it's really not going to destroy your cargo as bad as you think it would, and you have spray cans to actually help out with healing the crates themselves, which I'm not sure how they came up with the technology for that, but they've also somehow implemented large amounts of shelters with hologram technology all across the United States, which with what seems to be maybe a few people somehow constructed all of these, and I'm not sure how they did, but they somehow pulled it together and live pretty much solitarily in most of these shelters. And there's not too many, but there's definitely more than a few that makes you wonder how many people were there before they started building some of these shelters, and who really took over these shelters, or who'd they kill in order to take over these shelters for themselves. As far as the gameplay goes, it's actually quite enjoyable with the high quality graphics, the scenery around you, the ambient loneliness, yet still connected, which is unique to this game in the manner that it is a single player game, yet you are still connected with other players by the world, in which you can build bridges, different outpost things, safe houses to basically go down and restore your packages or build things from the materials you've found. You've also got places where you can park your vehicles or charge your vehicles in the need of traffic going through, or you can also build roads that are quite nice actually, and I'd highly suggest putting in the materials for that, and it's definitely a group effort in order to get most of these roads built. But I've done more than a few, and it makes the game go a lot smoother, especially with some standard deliveries, which aren't story mission imperative, but they're pretty nice, considering you will get certain materials, certain weaponry out of these that are leveled up, considering You'll get certain exo legs, such as for carrying more amount of weight on your back, or some for speed, others for all terrain, considering you will be going up into some higher up mountain areas and different terrains all across the entire map, some including snow, which you also need thermal heating for, but that's later on down the road, and it'll come into your lap as soon as you roll into these different areas. And the best part of it is you're not going to continuously walk for the entire game. Sure, there will be certain missions where they're going to be pretty much imperative that you're going to need to walk in order to get past these areas, but the best part about the connected world with everybody else playing as well and leaving their ladders or ropes is that there'll be a lot of different ways you'll be able to get around certain things without having to really work it out yourself, considering people can leave their stuff behind and show you the way, along with signs as well, or signs warning you of certain things in the area, such as mules or BTs in this area. And you'll definitely be able to make a different route out of these signs, basically make your way around a lot easier with the help of others without having a real cooperative play, but still having one subtly placed into the game, but not allowing somebody to completely take over your game and play it for you in a way. The only enemies you'll encounter in the game will basically be mules and the BTs. Now, we've already covered the BTs, and I'll cover that a bit more later with how they interact and attack you. But for right now, the mules are the biggest thing that you'll see up front that will attack you if you go into their area, which you'll notice around most of the safe houses or distribution centers. There's little beacons on the outside of it that make a power grid. You'll see these same ones but in orange around mule territory, and once you're inside of there, you'll be able to see them scan the area just like you do with your BB or bridge baby, and they'll be able to find out where you are and if you're holding cargo, and then they will start to attack you. But by the point that you actually go through any of these areas, you will have vehicles, and I highly suggest riding through these areas with vehicles, even if you have to go pick something up from inside their area, considering the combat system, you don't want to kill anybody, and it's going to be a bit clunky if you do use guns in the first place, but there are some fun ones that you can use. But avoiding the conflict is your best option against these guys, considering you really just want to get in and get out and keep progressing with the story, which is the main focus of the game that you really want to interact with. It's a whole lot of fun, and you don't want to be tied down to clunky mechanics of gunplay or hand-to-hand fighting. It really just doesn't have a really savory taste to it, and it gets pretty old pretty quickly if you really just stay in those areas and try to fight them. Now, BT encounters can be a little bit random, but for the most part you'll know where they're going to be at, and they'll be in some areas where it's pretty much unavoidable. For the most part, it'll immediately tell you once you've entered into the black timefall rain and you're in an area where these BTs are, they're not really moving, they're in stationary positions, but you'll be able to scan with your BB as to where the location is. There'll be a bit of stealth if you want to completely avoid them. Definitely don't ride your vehicle through if you're trying to just move through without getting attacked by any of these, because immediately as soon as you drive into one, they're going to pull you out of that vehicle, suck you down into their little black ocean, and then next thing you know, you're into a mini boss fight. Now, for the most part, it's not difficult to fight the BTs, and there's a bit of help from other players somehow. You'll be able to drop things for other people in different fights, so just in case, when using your own blood to attack them, which this is how the game works out, you'll have blood bags, and you'll have grenades and other weapons that'll draw from your blood, and every time you go to sleep, you'll get these blood bags filled, or you can craft them yourself, but you'll need them specifically for these fights against the BTs. And if you run out of blood bags, you start dipping into your own health supply. Now, it's not the worst thing if you do die, considering you don't technically die. Apparently Sam Porter is a repatriate, which means he basically could never die, which is very strange to me, but all he does is basically find his own body in the beach and then somehow gets portaled back to the land of the living unscathed completely, and basically just keeps resurrecting himself no matter what. And everybody in the world knows this, and apparently there's more than a few repatriates besides yourself, especially considering it's a part of the world with all their delivery people. But I can honestly say that the fights with the BTs are the most enjoyable fight scenes in the entire game. And it's a whole lot of fun considering you get to use powerful weapons, and you get more powerful weapons later on. First you start out with a grenade, but then you start to get actual guns, and it gets to be a lot of fun. And there's a lot of nice scenery with it. There's a lot of different playstyles you can choose to fight them with, and you can even choose to opt out and just run out of the area and escape them if you'd really like to. And the best part about it, if you ran into one of them with your vehicle, the vehicle will still be there, and you can go back and get all your cargo and then just keep driving on through. If you're really somebody that's teetering on the edge of whether or not you should buy this game, I would definitely say if you're a Kojima fanboy, this is your game. Buy it. You're going to love it. If you apparently loved all the Metal Gear Solid, which I've never played, but I've watched the gameplay on it, and some things are similar, but it's definitely not the same game, but it definitely has the same feeling with cinematic, long cinematic scenes, beautiful graphics, and a nice story architecture that's just constantly keeping you pushed forward and definitely doesn't let you down at any minuscule moments. Maybe a few facial expressions seem a bit numb or dull at certain really high emotional scenes, but at the same time, with how the story is written, it works out really well. And even though those facial expressions aren't to a T what they should be in real life or quality acting, it's not the worst thing in the world, considering the storyline is still very good. If you're a casual gamer, this might not be the game for you, but if you're a casual gamer that really enjoys a good single-player experience, one that's really long, and it can definitely feel like an episodic mini-series if you're somebody that plays maybe 1 to 3 hours a day, but it will take you a good long time to get through this game, considering it took me about 61 hours to complete, and I did not complete everything in the game. I just completed the main storyline and a few side missions. I really just tried to truck it on through because, honestly, as soon as I got into the storyline, I immediately just wanted to keep bum rushing through it, and I just wanted to finish it out because I just wanted to know what was going on. That's the most interesting portion of this game, is the whole storyline and what is even really going on in this whole world. And they do a really good job at explaining most of the events that are going on around you and a lot of the scenery that happens, but the enthralling nature of being somebody that can never die and having the world basically get nuked out constantly by dead bodies, and trying to figure out how this place called the beach even exists. It's one giant thrill ride, and it'll keep you guessing all throughout it, and I guarantee you there's going to be so many moments where you think, man, this is where the game ends. It's going to be a trilogy game, right? They're going to continue this. No, it keeps going, and it keeps getting better, all the way up until the end. As far as replayability, I wouldn't consider it to have a high replayability. I could see some people thoroughly enjoying playing this game over again, and at the course of the end of the game, you will have a continued game where you can go back and complete some of those missions you didn't do or deliveries you didn't do previous to completing the game, so that's nice. But at the same time, once I finished the storyline, I didn't really feel the need to go back and continue to play the game in order to get the other upgrades that I missed out on. It would have been nice at the end of the game, but at the same time, I just really wanted to push forward, and it just kept drawing me in. But for the most part, replayability is pretty low in my opinion. So if you do end up buying this game, remember it's going to be pretty much a one playthrough style of game, which I would honestly say it was worth my $60, and I wouldn't wait to get it, considering the community will die eventually, which means also all the buildings and structures that you see from the connectivity of other people's single-player games through the world will destroy over time themselves as well, considering you do have to repair them in order to keep them standing after they've been hit by the time fall, which ages and destroys their durability. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this game. It was well worth my $60. I had a lot of fun with it. It's definitely not the game for everyone, especially if you don't like the slow grind of certain single player campaigns with not a lot of combat as the main focus of the game, but more of a courier system. But if you are a person that enjoys that type of game, that enjoys also a really compelling storyline that's well written and cinematically done very well, then this is the game for you. And it was definitely the game for me, even though, considerably, I'm not the type of player that generally likes a slow, grindy campaign where there's not a lot of combat. But I actually couldn't put this down all the way until I finished it. It was a thoroughly enjoyable single player experience. And I'd give it 4 skulls out of 5. That's about it for my review. I will be going on to review Jedi soon enough, and I'll be streaming that as well as adding the finishing walkthrough for Death Stranding as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Catch you guys later, man.
Your BB stress levels are increasing. Remember, if it suffers an autotoxemic attack, it won't be able to help you detect BTs. To keep it calm, avoid sudden movements and stay as far away as you can from BTs and other threats.